All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I was going to wait a couple minutes just to see if everyone's just still coming in. No, some people are still trickling in, but we'll just go ahead and get started just for the sake of time. But Happy New Year. Welcome back, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to the Spring 2026 Hiring and Processing webinar. I'm so happy to have all of you here. Um, so it's just going to be just me presenting for today. My name is Eric Cuevas, and I am the HR Operations Lead for the Office of Human Resources. We're going to go ahead and get started. So just also some, once I get the agenda going, hold on, let's see if I can, here we go. Um, just to do some housekeeping before we get started with the agenda and moving on with the presentation. If you do have any questions, please feel free to use the chat function to submit your questions. I will have a spot designated at, in the midpoint of the session to answer any questions, and also some time at the end to do some Q&A. Um, so if I see your question, trust me, I'm not ignoring it. I'm just waiting for an appropriate time to answer all the questions that do come in, just for the sake of time and for covering the material in a timely manner. But okay, so just to get started, we will be covering the first half of this presentation in regards to student hiring, um, wrapping up the winter session. I know it's a question that we've been getting quite a bit in December, and as we've come back, I know that's some questions that have been on everyone's mind. Managing student employment, especially now with the unionization under R15, what is that going to look like, and what we know so far. Of course, it's a tricky thing to talk about with the knowledge that we know, but we'll do our best to kind of explore and explain as much as we can, as well as student employment rights that fall along with that as well. And then talking about the job codes that are available to the department hires, as well as the action reasons that are available in the student module, and entering certain types of transactions. So that's what we're going to be covering as far as the student portion, as well as some other odds and ends that we need to go over and recap in regards to student hiring. Uh, then as far as for part-time faculty hiring, I will be going over submitting in the module, as well as some onboarding portion, which I realize I may have omitted here from my agenda, but we'll be going over some like a recap on onboarding in case you need to hire a part-time faculty member for the first time. Uh, but yeah, as far as entering the information into the part-time faculty module, we'll be going over as far as durations, end dates, and action reasons that are available to you there. And then when is the occasion to use a personal action request form, or known as a PAR. And once we kind of cover that, I'll have some time at the end for some Q&A. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So student hiring. To recap what we had covered in an email that I had sent out mid-December, just kind of go over it one more time. The question that we get, how many hours can students work during this winter break? So if there's an active student assistant, they may work up to a maximum of 40 hours per week from this period of time, beginning that January 2nd through to the 14th. The work week, you know, as we kind of review the hours and how it's submitted and how our system kind of understands it, it's from Sunday through Saturday. So that's how the work week is set up. A schedule may exceed 8 hours per day as long as the total weekly hours do not exceed 40. So it can be in any kind of combination of hours throughout the week, as long as it doesn't exceed 40. We will be having a split week, as is the usual. For the semester. It usually begins on a Wednesday. However, this time it begins on a Thursday. So after reviewing that particular split week of the 11th through the 17th, the maximum hours that will be allowed is 32 for that week. And then another question that we get, and this is in regards to the population of students who are graduating or who graduated in fall of 2025. People were asking, when is the last day that they're able to work? And like with all things, it depends. So after the holiday campus closure, some graduating students, so excluding those in the 1868 job code, may continue to work through January 14th, 2026. I had also sent an email in regards to the process of what we expect and what our expectations are for the department to handle this. But if you haven't already, please email my colleague, Solvi Erickson, the graduating student's name, their employee ID, and a confirmation they've been made aware of the taxable impact on their January hours as soon as possible. That way, we can internally update their taxable status while they remain in job code 1860. Now, what do I mean when I say taxable impact or taxable status? I know that kind of question came up a bit. So there is a FICA exemption rule, tax exemption that is subject to all student assistants who are enrolled more than half time in a given semester. So given that these students have graduated, they're no longer uh, impacted by that FICA tax exemption. So their hours are now subject to uh, taxable deductions. So what I'm trying to convey here is that you communicate to your student that their check will look a little different, that for the hours that they work, there will be some uh, deductions that will be on that check in regards to their January hours. Um, Another important thing to note, if the student graduated and they were under the 1861 job code, they will need to be separated from their 1861 position and hired or rehired under their 1860 position with an end date of January 14th, 2026. The reason being is that the federal work study um, is only allotted for uh, hours that are, for a given semester. And since this is kind of now trails off uh, beyond that period of time, uh, it would have to be paid out through 1860. And then in regards to student employees under 1868 job code, given that they are under an F1 student visa, they can only work through the end of the fall semester. So in this case, the last day that was possible to work in the regular semester was the 23rd. And this is in accordance to the USCIS guidelines. So there isn't really much we can do in that regard. So that would be the last that they're able to work. And as far as managing student employment and kind of handling their uh, the kind of more tricky situations that may arise in handling their uh, analyzing behavior or things like that. But as far as your responsibility of handling student employees, they're like how you would handle any other employee. Um, they are now under a bargaining unit. They are now unionized under R15, under the CSUEU union. However, we are still currently awaiting a bargaining agreement to be ratified. So we don't have that as of this time, unfortunately. So a lot of things are a bit business as usual. We are still keeping an eye out that as soon as we know more about this, we will be notifying campus and implementing changes and trying to make that as smooth a transition as possible. Um, but again, I guess it's just more of the best practices. Um, you're still required to manage and review their performance. So we are asking that you share progress and ideas of improvement that are needed with the students, that they're able to kind of develop as they grow in their position, address any performance concerns. Again, none of this is currently being uh, nothing's written in stone just yet, as far as still waiting the bargaining agreement. But we are still asking that you continue to do these 6-month evaluations or however long you want to review these students, um, just so that they're able to kind of continue developing their position and their career. And it's kind of for most students, this can be their first job as they're entering the working world. So we want to make sure that we kind of set a good example for them for what they can expect when they enter the working world in a full-time capacity or in a regular kind of position. I'm going to touch on this one a little bit later in more detail, but just as a reminder, do not end their appointment early or separate or terminate them without consulting with human resources or employee relations. I'll get into more of what I mean by that. Um, yeah, there's a little bit to that what we can share. To not just separate them without cause or without notice. as far as that goes. But just a reminder, California labor laws, federal labor laws still apply for student assistant positions, just handled like any regular employee. Um, when they conclude their time working at CSUN, then they need to get their pay on their last day. It is to be issued out immediately, so we want to make sure that we handle the entering and submitting of time. Uh, we want to do that in a timely manner. Um, as far as like handling discrimination claims or workers' compensation, definitely turn that over to the employee relations team uh, in case of those kinds of scenarios or disputes or anything like that that would come up. They would be the best point of contact for those kinds of concerns. Um, Also, just wanted to put a reminder as far as meals and breaks for students. So, just a reminder, students will be given a 15-minute break during a 4-hour shift and at least a 30-minute break if they're to work between a 5 to 6 hour shift. 15 minutes is paid, 30 minutes is unpaid. Um, yeah, and that 15-minute cannot be accumulated. You can't make a 45-minute lunch, doing that or altering their normal work schedule. So if you do have more questions, we do have the rest break and meal period scenarios link. It'll be available once you're able to access the slide deck. So okay, going into the student module. So this is kind of where the entries kind of live and reside for all student job transactions. And just to kind of remind everybody, we did have a bit of a change as far as the student assistant structure. So the job codes do look a bit different this time around. So the 1860 students, formerly 1870, but now 1860, are the primary job code used for student assistants. Um, there is also the 1861 on-campus work study position. So if they are approved for federal work study, they would be hired under the 1861 position. 1868 is for student employees. So those are the students who are under a J1 or F1 visa. And I did highlight this one just because we are um, trying something new and trying some changes. So the 1874 job code was for taxable student assistance. So normally we'd use this in the summer or in certain cases, in a case-by-case basis during the spring semester. However, we are contemplating phasing this position out in favor of uh, just changing the taxable status on the 1860 position as now that we've, with the transfer's office and with the help of the system-wide HR in developing this position, the 1860, it's now robust enough that it can handle changes um, to their taxable status, and we will be able to keep their position active as long as a new appointment is being made. So there will be more to come on that for right now, but we are contemplating phasing this position out and its usage as 1860 would essentially have the same function as an 1874, and we wouldn't have that uh, cause for concern that a student has been separated from their 1874 position, or sorry, from their 1860 position, and now being hired in 1874. And if it's not done in a certain way, they could have the potential to lose their access if they've been granted any special access. Again, more to come on that. We're just more exploring the idea of phasing that out going forward. But moving on to the other main group of students that we're going to be talking about today is the 1150, the instructional student assistants. These are represented under R11, the academic student employees. Uh, just a reminder, they also have work study positions available to them as well. 1151 is for on-campus and 1153 is for off-campus. And then for off-campus stateside, so not related to work study, it would be 1152. Oop, what happened? Oops. Uh-oh. Here we go. So as far as background check in regards to student workers, they are only required to undergo a background check if required by law. Um, we do advise that you review the CSU sensitive positions to see um, what that kind of would fall under. So some easy reminders would be if the student is working with minors, if they are sworn CSU personnel, police personnel, or cadets or dispatchers, then it would fall under this. If their positions have access to stored criminal offender record information, patients, drugs, or medication, or if they have cash handling responsibilities, then yes, they would need to go through a background check. Um, if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to backgroundchecks@csun.edu, and they'd be more than happy to help you with that inquiry. As far as signing in, student workers will need to sign in if it is their first appointment or if they haven't worked at CSUN in 18 months. To schedule a sign-in appointment, you would email HR customer service at csun.edu. Currently, office hours are Monday through Friday by appointment only. We do ask that you provide all the new hires with the new employee sign-in form. It's available on the HR Forms website, or I believe it's also on its separate website as well. But uh, it is required for the appointment scheduling, and it must be completed by the department. So these students will be submitting a new employee sign-in form, uh, the express sign-in document, and the acceptable documents to complete their I-9 form. Uh, having their proof or authorization to work or their residency as well. All right, so for the 1860 students, as a reminder, they are represented currently under bargaining unit 15. We are still awaiting that tentative agreement. Once the student is hired, they can be separated or rehired based on the department's need. Um, as far as best practices, we are now requiring that all positions have an end date entered for the student when you are submitting for a student record. So always enter an end date. We are currently asking the departments to default them to the end of May, just to kind of have a little bit of an easier time when we're handling that transition period between spring and summer. And obviously more to come on that once we get closer to the summer months. I'll have another webinar to discuss that at length. But right now we're asking departments to default their end date to end of May. So May 31st, 2026. Um, as far as how the way we handle appointments, so if it's a continuing appointment, we don't want to have any gaps between their appointments. So if the appointment was scheduled to end, May, or excuse me, December 24th, for whatever reason, that's the date that was selected, it would have to be December 25th, even if it's a holiday. It just has to be the next calendar day to extend them out into a new appointment, into a new period of um, active work. Um, we do ask that you notify the student if they will be separated. Um, when you do that, please ensure that all hours are entered and approved. Enter the separation one day after the last hours are reported. Um, and please notify your payroll technician that is assigned to your area when doing so. That way we're able to um, have their hours submitted and paid out as soon as possible. Just given that we are subject to California labor laws, we want to make sure that we get it to them in as timely manner as possible. So as of January 1st, 2026, the minimum hourly rate is $16.90 an hour, and the current maximum has stayed at $24 an hour for the 1860 positions. So a little bit more on those separations. So when you're notifying the student, please clearly state the reason. So an example would be budgetary constraints. It must be objective, non-discriminatory, and aligned with employment laws. Uh, like I mentioned, student employees are considered employees under both state and federal law, and like any other employee would be. If you do need help, please contact employee relations when you are deciding to separate for performance-related reasons. And a little bit more on the minimum wage increase. So all students who were currently under the 1690 or $16.90 hourly rate will be brought up to the new minimum. And that'll be an internal process handled by HR. Existing hires at 19 or excuse me at $16.90 or above will not receive this rate adjustment. Um, so you can always submit a student job data change form for any increase that's done outside of this, mass update or for any uh, reason. But if you do have questions, contact your director of financial operations, or if there's a particular kind of liaison at your division. If you do have questions as far as entering in, uh, yeah, or to uh, do an increase on a student who is already at 1690 or above, uh, and for creating it to be like a meritorious increase or however, please contact them first. So the student assistant appointment notice. So an appointment notice will be generated for all students who are hired, rehired, or have a new appointment. So it'll be generated approximately 2 weeks after the transaction is keyed. An appointment notice will be generated for all students who have updates made to their job information, including hire, rehire, pay rate change, or effective date change. So we have gotten questions from some students and some departments asking, they see it come from an automated email. It's not, a phishing scam or, kind of an email scam. It is a legitimate email that's coming from CSUN. Uh, it is just the automated email that sends out to give them the information so they can uh, look at their appointment notice. So as far as the other student group, that's the 1150 instructional student assistants. They are R11. They are academic student employees, which is the same unit as the teaching associates and graduate assistants. They have appointment letters generated to stipulate the job's duration, their job duties, yeah, et cetera. And yeah, their rates still stand as of July 1st, 2024. We haven't had changes as of yet, but their minimum is $17.86 with a maximum of $23.84. Now, before in previous presentations, I used to have two sections as far as what the action reasons are available, um, depending on the job code they're in. But given that we've had some restructuring and reorganizing with the student assistant positions, these job codes are kind of across the board to be used for all of them. So hopefully that's a little bit simpler to remember. But again, just to recap, um, for a hire, you would use HIRCON. So that is a hire concurrent job. TEREND, that is a termination and temporary appointment. So remember, the effective date that you use would be the last day worked plus 1 calendar day. And only submit this separation after all the hours are entered or approved in the timesheet. Otherwise, if the student is self-reported, they wouldn't be able to enter in their own time. You'd have to do it on their behalf. REH is used for a rehire to bring a student back from terminated status, and a DTA APT, so that stands for data change new temporary appointment. Now, I know that sounds a little bit vague, and it does have multiple uses in this case. So when you are extending an appointment is its primary usage, but it can also be used for increases. So in this case, if you do a student employee job data change form, they're being evaluated, and you want to give them a pay increase, it can be done using the DTA APT action reason. To go over how you can access this, when you log into your CSUN portal under HR, you would select HR admin and it would bring you to this page. And here you would select student employment. Now, obviously, your options may vary. Again, this is the options that are seen with my access and with my login. So what you're looking for is one that says student employment. So here you're going to search for the student that you would like to hire or update. You would enter in their employee ID or their national ID. It's preferred that you enter those as opposed to entering their name, given that they may have a common name and maybe more than one result might come up. We wouldn't want to enter a position on an incorrect record. That would cause some cleanup and kind of cause some headaches along the way. So I want to make sure we're entering it for the right person. So after you search for the employee, you'll be directed to the student job summary page. And here you can, yeah, you select the button Add Student Concurrent Job. This would be used for a brand new hire, or if they already have an existing position, you would select the button that just says Add. That is to add a row to an existing job. So let's say you want to extend their appointment, you would select the Add button. We also have the job history button available. If you're not sure of, you want to extend the appointment, but you don't know what their previous end date was, or you don't remember, you can use that to look that up and know, oh, okay, so I can just do it one calendar day after that as my effective date for the extension. So to go over hires, so the effective date would be the first day of their appointment. Action reason would default to HIRCON, so you can just type that in or use the magnifying glass. The hourly rate, again, it can fall anywhere between that new minimum of 16.90 through to 24. But always, check with the CSU salary schedule. That's a good way to check and confirm the minimum and maximum rate for any particular job code. So in this case, they're being paid 20 hours or $20 per hour. You don't need to mess with standard hours. That usually just defaults to 4 or whatever is based on the position. That has no real bearing on how many hours they're able to submit, because that's all handled through a timesheet. It's through a different kind of entry, and that won't impact it. Expected end date. So, like I mentioned before, the 1860s will default to the end of the May 2026 pay period. So we're going to select May 31st. And if it's an 1150 or an 1868, we are asking that you use the end of the semester, May 22nd, 2026. And for a work study position, so an 1861, or the work study positions for 1150, May 15th, 2026 will be the default expected end date. When doing a separation, please remember that you would submit the effective date one day after their last day worked. So in this case, if I'm selecting March 14th, 2026, that means their last day worked was the 13th. If you check the calendar, you might see that, oh, the 14th, isn't that a Saturday? Yes, that's fine. It doesn't have to be the following Monday. It has to be the next calendar day. The action reason here would be TEREND. And you don't need to change any other data points when you do the separation. It really is just the effective date and the action reason that drives this transaction. Because the rest is just the same information from their previous appointment. So you don't need to change the expected end date or anything like that. I know sometimes people ask, do I need to change the end date when doing the separation? You don't have to do that. Yeah, so like I mentioned before, to check the job history, you would select the job history button, and that would tell you, it would bring up a page that would show all their active records or inactive records and what the expected job end date would be. So that's a good way to kind of double check in case you're ever confused as far as how extensions work or how to do that. So in this case, an appointment extension, so that'd be the effective date would be one day after the appointment's previous end date. As a reminder, there are no gaps in appointments, so you just use the job history to confirm that end date for a continuing appointment. The action reason would be DTA, APT. The hourly rate would change if you are using this action reason for a merit increase. If you're doing that, reminder that the effective date in that particular instance will be the first day of the pay period. So you would need to check the payroll calendar to confirm. And if you have questions, you can reach out to your operations technician for your department. And then what's also crucial is that you update the expected end date. So it should now reflect their new appointment. So in this case, we kind of just, say they have an appointment in the summer is kind of what it would look like, kind of an idea. If their last day was May 31st, then the next day would be June 1st. Okay, so that's what I have so far on student hiring. So let me review to see if we have any questions. I think I did see some in the chat. Right, the pay range for 1150. I think that was covered in a previous slide. Um, Let me just go back and double check here just so I can read that off to you. The minimum is 1786 and the maximum is 2384. And Jen's question, who could we contact to ask what the pay range for an SA2 should be? Um, in case you do have questions, in case you do have questions as far as pay ranges at this time, um, I would suggest maybe reaching out to the classification and compensation team uh, in the HR unit. I think that would be the best point of contact to answer that. Okay, let's see. Can you elaborate more on ISAs completing the required CSU mandated training in regards to recording those hours, students holding multiple student employee positions? I think I need to get back to you on that as far as um, when they complete that training, does it count as entering in the time? Like, would it count as hours worked? Is that the and if they need to report it under multiple positions? Yeah, I need to flag that so I can answer offline on that one. Okay, so Jacqueline, can we have 1860 open and 1861 federal work study? So I believe what you mean is to have both positions active at once. Um, I know in the past we had suggested that that would be a viable option to, when the funds run out, you would just now start submitting under 1860. We're actually suggesting now to move away from that at this time, that it's now more up to the department and the student to review the federal work study balance to make sure that when that runs out, that that position is separated and they're hired or rehired under the 1860 position, to not have a position kind of left open. Um, yeah, a multitude of reasons, but it's just a little bit cleaner to keep it that way, that only one active position and time being submitted for one position, uh, not to have this kind of, multiple positions kind of kept active if they're not actively working in both. Um, but okay, yeah, we can take this offline as well, Jacqueline. Um, Rachel, so I want to confirm that no action is needed from me for our student assistance with the increased rate, 1690. Correct. So if they are below $16.90, then HR will be handling that internally. So no action on the department side. We'll be bringing them up to the new minimum. No problem, Rachel. Okay, so if you have more questions, we'll leave some time at the end, but we'll go ahead and keep moving into the part-time faculty hiring section. All right, so recap on background checks for part-time faculty. So all new and rehired part-time faculty, so those who've been separated for 12 months or more in this case, will need a background check. And faculty must have a current and cleared background check on file. Um, as far as the policy goes, contingent offers must be accepted to initiate. And you would submit requests through the chargeback system. It's available through the financial services um, page on the CSUN portal. For questions regarding the limited exceptions for background check, the background check limited exception forms, excuse me, you can send a direct inquiry to limited exception form at csun.edu. Like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, student employees are not subject unless they are required by law. If you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to backgroundchecks at csun.edu. When you are submitting or beginning the background check process, a copy of the faculty's CV or the resume is not required for this process. So you can attach that to the chargeback. Um, but yeah, so just quick recap for this process. If you already have their degree or their transcript, you can select package 8 to exclude the educational component. If your department chair has checked the references as part of the hiring process, um, you can just attach the completed questionnaire and request package 3, as that one excludes the references. And if you have both degree and references, you can just attach the degree and references and request package number 9. So who will need a sign-in? So all new faculty, TAs, GAs, ISAs also would fall under this as well, for academic student employees. Um, or if they're rehired as well. So if they've been separated for 18 months or more, they're required to complete a full sign-in. If they're separated for 12 months or more, they may need to complete a new I-9. If the rehire falls between 12 and 18 months, you can contact HR customer service at csun.edu to confirm the requirements. We are asking that you complete this before the start of the semester, so January 15th, 2026. Um, if the background check is still pending, HR will hold the sign-in packet until the background check clears, or if we get an approved limited exception form. So whichever comes first. To schedule sign-in appointment, you would email HR customer service at csun.edu. Office hours again, Monday to Friday, appointment only. You need to provide the new hires with the new employee sign-in form. It's required for the appointment scheduling, and it must be completed by the department. So as far as paperwork goes, then you would have the cleared background check, the new employee sign-in form, uh, and then acceptable documents to complete the form I-9, their SC1, so that's statement of professional experience, and the faculty degree verification that will be handled by background check. Um, so as far as the new faculty sign-in, there's also an express document where they can just fill in a document that would kind of populate all of the forms that HR would kind of handle behind the scenes. But if you do have questions as far as what paperwork is needed, or if you need to troubleshoot the document, you can always email HR customer service at csun.edu. So then after signing completion, they would receive proof of sign-in, and faculty will receive their CSUN ID. The records and registration office at Admissions and Records will send an email to faculty's CSUN email to help set up their digital MetaCard. You can email them at metacard@csun.edu. Requests for access are no longer being submitted by HR. IT's automated process is contingent on the job record being entered in the system. But if you need to follow up or you have more questions as far as IT, reach out to help desk at csun.edu. So yes, after the background check clears, they can begin the sign-in process. Again, on or before January 15, 2026. Failure to comply may result in a late hire with impact to the employee's academic pay if that I-9 is not complete. Yeah, just more recap, just kind of reiterate what we were talking about before. Um, but yes, as far as the job codes that are used in the part-time faculty module, we have the academic student employee group that falls under R11. The ones that we entered here would be the teaching associates, graduate assistants, and monthly graduate assistants. For faculty, which fall under R03, uh, the only job code that's available at this time is the 2358 part-time faculty to submit through the module. For spring 2026, only one semester appointment durations. Now, the reason being is that we're still thinking about the academic year, right? The 25-26. So we're not submitting for anything beyond that. So it would just only be eligible to submit items for one semester. If you need to submit anything that is outside of that scope, that would extend beyond that, or um, if you have questions, most likely would be a PAR form, but please feel free to reach out to your operations technician so we can confirm. And yeah, as far as monthly graduate assistants, we are asking departments to submit a PAR for those positions in particular. That way we can hire and separate them and make sure they don't get overpaid. I want to make sure that their appointments are kind of set up in a way where, um, it doesn't just kind of continuously issue out through master payroll. So the job actions that are available in the part-time faculty module. So setting up a new hire, when you search up an employee, it gives you an option there at the bottom that says hire new PTF employee. Um, for continuing faculty, you can cancel. If you do a hire and you need to cancel, there's a canceled appointment. Um, there is a time-based change. So for any time-based increase or decrease, you would use the TIM code. And then for reappointment, which kind of equates to a new temporary appointment. So if they are hired in fall on a S1, then you can hire them in spring and just reappoint them for another S1 position, uh, to another S1 appointment rather. But yeah, so you use the REA code. For rehiring faculty, the job actions that are available. Um, so for rehired faculty, you would search and select the inactive employee, and then you would enter in that effective date. I mean, it should auto-populate, but then you would update their paid units. And that means once you save it, it should change it from separated status to active status, and they should be rehired. So the default system appointment dates for spring 2026 are as follows. So um, the part-time lecturer and teaching associate kind of fall under the same AY alignment. So start date would be um, January 15th, end date May 22nd. But the graduate assistant has a little bit of a staggered kind of hire that their AY period begins the first day in the February pay period and ends in the last day of the June pay period. The effective date of hire for the monthly GAs doesn't follow these semester dates, and usually used for short-term appointments. So, kind of give an example of like a 1 month type situation that doesn't align with that start and end date. Okay, so entry and approval deadlines. So their first warrant that will get issued out for work performed in spring 2026 will be inclusive of work done from January 15th from the start through to the end of February. Their keying deadline is Thursday, January 29th, 2026. That's the keying deadline for departments to submit. And of the approval deadline will be that following Friday, so the January 30th, 2026. Their first pay will be issuing out March 1st. Late starts can still be entered in through the module. You don't need to submit a par for those. And transaction must be keyed into the PeopleSoft part-time faculty module and approved in time in order to guarantee processing for February's pay warrant. Which is kind of why we're asking that you do this a little bit earlier, given that their deadlines are in January, even though that the payment won't be issuing out until end of February. It's just a way that we can have everybody with an active position and to not have any issues in regards to access or anything of that nature. I want to make sure that that is kind of taken care of. So for generating an appointment letter after this a position has been entered through the part-time faculty module, so for those who have access to Solar HR queries, you can access it through that query name there. Lecturers on a 3-year appointment will need their letters generated manually if they do not have any changes posted. So if it's continuous, like they're teaching 3 units and they're not going to be teaching any more or less for this current semester, then you will need to go and generate that manually. The faculty member, if they're not showing up in the query, you can try leaving all the fields blank, running it again, and filter down to your respective college. If you do have more questions, please feel free to see the appointment letter quick guide on HR Toolkit or contact your operations technician if you have more questions. So again, just a quick recap on how the spring hire pay warrant distribution kind of falls is always 6 monthly installments for pay for those AY positions. Or if they're teaching fall and spring, then to get their 12 checks, their final one being issued out, uh, in this case, in end of August, beginning of September, in that case. But it would be residual monies kind of owed from the start of the fall semester, would be that final warrant. Um, let's see. Yeah, so it is a little bit odd, but that's kind of how the the pay structure kind of works with issuing out payment for academic year. So a personal action request form, or PAR, is used when a correction or an action is needed that can't be done through the module. So some examples would be you're rehiring an employee whose salary has an outdated minimum, or you're hiring a lecturer who is teaching full-time or 15 units. Uh, we also have some templates and descriptions available on the part-time PAR list on our website. It isn't needed to hire after the entry deadline if you're still able to enter to the module. So if it's beyond January 29th and it's beyond that deadline, you can technically still submit. But what we're asking is that you notify your HR operations technician of that late entry, just so that we can make sure to process um, and get that sent over to payroll. We're asking to have all PARs into HR by the start of the semester. Of particular note would be any new employees that would kind of have a access issue if they aren't hired by their first day of the semester, and for rehired annuitants. I know those are kind of a pressing item. So if you do have or are aware of any rehired annuitants that need to be handled, that's done through the personal action request form. So submit those as soon as possible. Yeah, reason being, CalPERS has reduced their payroll processing window from 3 months to a single month, so 30 days. And we assess a $500 late processing fee per item. So we want to make sure that, the department submit this as soon as possible so we can act on it as quickly as we can. So there's a quick chart so you can see how, what you can do in the module versus what would go on a PAR. So in the module, it'd be hire, time-based change, cancellation, rehire, and reappointment. On a PAR, it would be any corrections for a mistake done in the module, for leave of absences, adjustment to full-time to bring them up to a 1.0 FTE, rehired annuitants, or if they have an outdated base salary in their system. Obviously, more examples, but you can check those out at the HR Toolkit samples list. Okay, to wrap up here, just to go over Master Payroll Certification, MPC. This is your chance to review all salaried employees scheduled to be paid for a given pay period. If they're entitled to full or partial pay, you would certify the employee along with the corrected note in the comment box. Here are some examples. Exceptions to look for are terminated employees, employees on unpaid leave status, new hires or rehires with an effective date that is after the final MPC date noted on the payroll calendar, and if they have any assignment changes. So if you do have questions, you can reach out to your payroll technician. Just a quick note. So as far as initial and final, initial is kind of where we capture all of the records that are currently active and will be issuing out via the master payroll certification process. So those changes need to be done prior to 6 a.m. on that initial date in order to be reflected. And then the final to capture, the only thing it would capture would be anything new that it didn't capture before, will be terminations, new hires, and the approved doc days. You may need to use a MPC exception form if an employee is not reflected on the master payroll certification, or for any hire or rehire enter the part-time faculty module after that final MPC date. Mid-semester time-based changes, you would certify, but leave a comment for payroll to review. But again, for any questions regarding master payroll certification, please contact your payroll technician. That's a quick review of the resources that I use to kind of cover the material in this presentation. And in case you do have questions in regards to faculty appointments or anything regarding their contract, you can contact the Office of Faculty Affairs. And for hiring and processing questions, you can contact operations based on the college or area. Or if you do have questions, you can always reach out to me as well. But that pretty much does it. So I will leave this space open for anyone who has any questions. But for anyone else, just want to say thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.